promoting our upcoming literacy virtual office hours. So I'll start with the letters training. I'll go ahead and ask you to, there we go. So one of the things that we have been able to do even before the funding from Senate Bill 681 is provide letters training. And letters training is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. And if you have been lucky enough to take letters either previously or maybe you're currently in letters, we just ask that you share your experience. And what I'd like to tell you a little bit about letters, if you haven't taken letters, and right now registration is open. So Lisa, I'll ask you to advance that slide. So if you take letters, you'll be able to engage in multiple ways of learning. So first you'll have the manual that has the text and the research and the reading. There's online modules that you'll be able to view, lessons, as well as model teachers that provide examples for those practices. And then there are face-to-face live sessions, and we host those. If you're part of Read, Lead, Exceed, we will have those in person throughout the state. And I think one of the most important components of the letters training is the bridge to practice. And this is where you have the opportunity to practice with a select group of students that you choose, and then follow those students along through that training each year, utilizing the strategies and the practices that you're learning, and then documenting those students' progress, and then having opportunities to reflect and debrief those activities with other colleagues moving through the training, as well as the facilitators. And this really brings the whole training together and into the classroom, just that exactly what it's called, that bridge to practice. So the bridge from the learning into the practice into the classroom. So there's several different opportunities that multiple individuals and educators can engage in with letters training. So we'll start with our K-5 educators. So I'll ask you to advance the slide, Lisa. So all K-5 educators are invited to sign up for letters training, which is the 3rd edition. We call Volume 1 and Volume 2. And currently registration is open for the 24-25 school year. If you're viewing this right now, you can get the QR code and get right to our registration page, or you can also access the link that's under Read, Lead, Exceed letters training. The next opportunity for letters training is for early childhood. Again, there's a QR code. This is for preschool teachers, and currently we have space available for any public school preschool teacher that would like to join the early childhood letters training. Again, this training is offered all throughout the state at each of our regional professional development centers, and is specifically focused on those skills and the things that students need to learn before they start reading. So it helps them learn all of those skills and practices before they even start kindergarten. The next opportunity, which is for administrators, there's 3 ways that administrators can support the letters training. First, we have Letters for Administrators, and you can access that QR code or use the link that's listed there to get more information about that. We will be hosting dates across the state for letters training for administrators. I think we're going a little bit forward there, Lisa. Back up just a second.
Wait a second.
Yeah, you need to go backwards. Back one more time. Back one more time.
All right.
So no, you're fine. So access this particular QR code to get on that Letters for Administrators. The second option that you have is we have Science of Reading for Administrators. This is training that's provided at each of our local regional professional development centers. And you can go directly to those RPDC's websites and sign up for that. The third option is to go through letters training. So you can sign up and actually take letters, third edition, or letters volume 1 and volume 2, or the letters for early childhood. But we want you to be involved because we know that administrator support is critical to student success. So the more you know, the more you can help, and the more you can help your teachers grow. And the next thing that I'm super excited to be able to share with you, and this is brand new, is the Aspire training. So Lexia has now developed Science of Reading professional development for those middle school grade levels. So we are inviting all teachers or educators of 6 through 9 students, educators and administrators, to join this training. It will begin early spring and into the summer of 2025. But we are asking now that you can use this QR code and reserve your spot and join the wait list for Aspire. Again, Aspire is not just for English language arts teachers. It is for all content area teachers. And it is an excellent training, and our RPDC, our literacy coaches are working to create additional support opportunities around Aspire. Aspire has been out for a little while, but if you take Aspire through the Read, Lead, Exceed Aspire training, you will have additional support and collaborative sessions to help work through all of that content and that learning, and then just have a coach to kind of help you navigate that learning, and again, into that bridge to practice into the classroom, and what that might mean for you as an English teacher or a science teacher or a social studies teacher in those middle school grade levels. So please take advantage of any of those. The next thing I'd like to talk about, you're good, Lisa, is our evidence-based reading instruction program. And we have multiple opportunities for reimbursement for resources and materials that align with evidence-based reading instruction. Currently, the application window is open until September 1st of 2024. So if you put your teachers through Read, Lead, Exceed letters training, you can request substitute reimbursement if your school required substitutes for those face-to-face sessions. We have 161 LEAs that are eligible for evidence-based reading instruction materials reimbursement. And now we have, I'm going to ask you to go back just a second, Lisa. No, that's all right. We have now updated our state-approved instructional materials list. There's approximately 25, 26 programs that are now eligible for reimbursement. And those programs range from a K-5 core program. I believe there are 3 of those. K-2 core programs, and multiple supplemental programs. All have been vetted and evaluated and are aligned with the science of reading and with evidence-based reading instruction practice. The next thing that's available on the state application is for teacher stipends for letters. So if your teachers move through the letters training and your LEA provided stipends, this is an excellent opportunity for your teachers to get paid an additional stipend for the hard work that they're doing moving through letters. And finally, the K-3 foundational reading assessments. This is a reimbursement for the new K-3 foundational reading assessments that were mandated and required by Senate Bill 681. If your school is using a state-approved assessment, you can access reimbursement for the funds up to the cost and the allocation that's provided. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to flip one more time. There we go. So also in the evidence-based reading instruction program, there's a couple of focus areas that are repeated here. Well, I guess the instructional materials. If you purchased letters training materials and your teachers are utilizing maybe an in-house facilitator and you're not going through Read, Lead, Exceed, but you're purchasing materials for teachers to go through that training, you can request reimbursement for the cost of those funds up to $667 or $333.50 for each volume. One of the most, I think, really great opportunities for utilizing these funds is in the Future Literacy Excellence. And we call this the FLEX focus area. This is for reimbursement of student and family resources for summer reading programs, stipends for teachers who tutor before or after school. You could also use this flex funding if you selected an out of school tutoring service. And so that could be used to support the tutoring. Every single LEA in the state of Missouri received an allocation for this funding. The minimum funding that an LEA would receive is $4,250. It's based on the percentage of basic and below basic third grade MAP scores. And so all LEAs are eligible for this funding. And we still have many LEAs that have yet to request their reimbursement for any of these eligible expenses. Okay, so I'm going to say go on. I'm going to switch. Oh, this is just an image of our guidance. There's two different guidance documents. It's a little confusing, but if you go to our website, you can access both of these guidance documents. And there's federal funding that we've used for the Flex and letters training materials for those that aren't in Read, Lead, Exceed. And we've used our COVID relief money for that. The evidence-based reading instruction program for the state, that is all funds that were allocated by the legislature through the Senate Bill 681 literacy legislation. Okay, I'm going to move on and talk about K-3 assessments. I think that this is absolutely one of the best things that we have been able to do for our state. This is exciting. We've never been able to, as a state or even regionally, identify exactly where our students are in their reading development in those critical years in kindergarten through third grade. And so we now have that ability. And as LEAs are taking up the new state-approved assessments, then we're able to collect that data and make decisions in the Office of Literacy based on that data. What professional development do we need to provide based on the data? Where are areas that in certain regions we are noticing that there's a significant need for phonemic awareness professional development, phonics? So it breaks down all of those 5 essential skills: phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And we're able to see where our students are in their reading development journey and then attend to those needs. And so I'd like to, if you just flip the slide, one of the several things that have come out of having this statewide assessment where we are where we're utilizing assessments that we can bring together that data and analyze it. There are several things that have come out of that. Number one is just having that reading development data and knowing where our students are. Secondly is this is formative assessment. This is formative assessment that teachers can use to identify what the next steps are for instruction for their students. It's also brought about a level of collaboration within the schools, but also within our office and schools. We have been able to provide support in ways that we haven't had that opportunity before. In the same way with our regional professional development centers and our 50 literacy coaches across the state to be able to come in and support schools with identifying those students who require a reading success plan. And there is professional development and workshops that are designed in collaboration with DESE's Office of Literacy and all of our literacy coaches across the state that can come in and support teachers and administrators in that data analysis. So once those assessments have been completed, what's next? It's that data analysis and being able to identify what exactly our students need and what the next steps of instruction should be. So that would include that progress monitoring and that parent communication. So if you are getting ready to start this next year and you have 1 year under your belt with those reading success plans and the foundational reading assessments, and you are ready to dive in deeper, please reach out to your local RPDC and the literacy coaches, because they have plenty of professional development ready for you. Also, and I'll ask you to advance the slide, don't forget about the guidance. So we have the guidance that is posted on our webpage, and I can tell you that there will be some updates that will be available in August. And those updates include some clarification in some areas, as well as scenario-based guidance. So for each of the areas, we'll provide some information about a particular student and how they were assessed and what does that mean for a reading success plan? Do they need a reading success plan? Do they not? What kind of goals might that student need? So I think that it's very helpful to have a scenario-based guidance, because we can read through all of the guidance, but sometimes it's just helpful to see, okay, well, if a student scores this and they need this, what does that look like on an RSP, and how do I create that to be most effective? So those will be coming out in August. And I'm going to ask you to advance your slide. And I'm just going to say that I talked about this a lot, but I'll say one more time, please reach out to your regional professional development centers for RSP professional learning series. They can customize it for your LEA. All of our literacy coaches have been trained in the state approved assessments. So our vendors have come into our state literacy meetings and provided that training, multiple trainings to our literacy coaches. So please know that they have a very good understanding of the assessment that you're using. They can customize that training to your LEA. It includes student data analysis. And we just want you to know that that is an extremely valuable resource that is available to any and all LEAs across the state. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm almost done, is I wanted to share our literacy office hours. So these are the virtual office hours that we started in the spring of 23-24 school year. And we will be starting those again in August. And I believe that date is August 15th. And that will be an every week virtual office hours opportunity for people to come to the office hours, listen to either a special topic with a time for question and answers at the end, or it will just be an open topic question and answer opportunity. So we'll alternate those, and we will start off in that on the Thursday, whatever that Thursday is, I think August 15th. And I'm sorry, I don't have that date on here. But we'll start off with our special topic being about reading success plans and assessments, and then offer a time for question and answer at the end. And then that very next week will just be an open topic. Any question that you have about any literacy resource or professional learning that's available, you can join, and we'll make sure that someone is on that whole hour to answer questions and provide guidance. So just a reminder, please look at the literacy webpage for resources and guidance for the reading success plans, for our early learning and early literacy assessment cycle. All of our literacy administrative memos are posted on our literacy webpage. We also have a Read, Lead, Exceed webinar series that we put out in last year that deals with all of the topics that I've talked about today. We also have a literacy FAQ that you could access. And then finally, I wanted to just make sure that I provided all of our literacy teams' email addresses. So the references up top, that is the web page, the address to our web page. But my address, Heather Knight. Cassandra Beatty is our Comprehensive Literacy State Development Director. Oh, I didn't update this. Cami Goucher is our English Language Development Director. Kaylee Beck is our Literacy Program Manager. And I've left one off. She's brand new. I must have put this slide in from a previous presentation that she wasn't here yet, but I just want to give a shout out to Olivia Apsher. I think I saw her on here, saw her name on here as a participant. Olivia Apsher is our brand new early literacy director. She is one of those positions that we were able to secure through the literacy legislation and Senate Bill 681. And we are so glad to have her. And I'll make sure that Lisa, you have her information so we can get that on there for the posting of this. So thank you.
Missourians, is this not the most exciting news, I think, in my past 54 years of life? I mean, we are headed down the path. We are headed, Missouri is not going to be, last in Missouri. We are leading this country at our Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We have a ways to go, but we're on the right track. And I really appreciate you, Heather, and all of your information. The chat is not working, as some of you have noted. So if anybody knows how to get it started, otherwise, please introduce yourself in the Q&A. That works just as well. And we'll be answering your questions at the end. Now, our next speaker, I'm honored to have Mr. Ron Fairchild, Senior Consultant. I call him a guru, literacy guru, an all-around great guy, provide us with an understanding of what is happening nationwide with literacy coalitions and collaborations that work. Ron currently serves as the president and CEO of the Smarter Learning Group, a national consulting firm focused on helping communities disrupt generational poverty. In that capacity, he has served as senior consultant to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading since 2011. Ron believes in the transformational impact of education to reshape possibilities, not just for individuals, but for entire communities in advancing justice and expanding success. Prior to launching the firm in 2011, Ron served as the founding CEO of the National Summer Learning Association and the executive director of its predecessor organization, the Center for Summer Learning at Johns Hopkins University, also my alma mater, from 2002 to 2010. His earlier positions include serving as Director of Education Programs for the National Office of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and an Education Associate with the Public Education Network. He's also a former public school teacher who holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Vanderbilt University. Welcome, Ron.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us for this exciting webinar. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year, GLR week, and it gives me an opportunity to move around the country virtually. And I am thrilled to be able to be with you today. I also just want to say a special thank you to Heather for joining us and for sharing about the Office of Literacy in the state. That is a significant accomplishment to get that office established. And as important as all of those resources are that Heather covered, it's also important to know that the state is putting a stake in the ground around the responsibility and accountability for moving the needle and closing the gap on literacy, which we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about. I also just want to thank Lisa and Kristen for their incredible leadership at both sides of the state, Kansas City and St. Louis, and really, I think, setting the stage and laying the groundwork and building coalitions and champions for this work, really going back to 2011, 2012. And one of the great joys of my role in being part of the campaign for so long is I've had the great pleasure of meeting so many champions and advocates and people across this country that without them, we wouldn't have a campaign for grade level reading. And I also want to acknowledge and pay tribute to one of those incredible champions and advocates who died recently at the age of 101. Bert Berkeley was a pillar of the civic, philanthropic, and business community in Kansas City. And I counted him among one of my early friends that I made in the campaign. And during my first visit to Kansas City, he was one of the first people I met who was as passionate an advocate for literacy as I have ever seen across the country. And we lost a giant in the field just recently with his passing. But one thing Bert was very adamant about was about focusing on the needs of kids and families who are marginalized, who are in poverty, and saw literacy as the key, really, to unlocking the American dream and the idea that you could go farther and faster through education and opportunity than almost any other way. And so I just want to pay tribute to him, and that's, I think, a fitting way to start my remarks today, is to say that the campaign really begins, our starting point and my personal starting point and my why, if you will, really has to do with poverty. And I'm going to ask Lisa to advance us to the first slide. And I'm going to go through this background on the campaign quickly, but I think it's important to cover this as a frame for what we're learning about what works in coalition work in communities across the country, because where you start often determines where you end up. And I think the starting point for the campaign, I know the starting point for the campaign has always been this conviction that the best way to break cycles of generational poverty is to intervene as early as possible. I know that to be true in my own life. That education and literacy in particular opened up horizons for me that I never thought would be possible. And we have to rebel against the reality that we're seeing in this country, that zip code predicts is one of the best predictors of academic performance. And we should not live in a culture or a society where you start in life determines where you finish. And so this is something that the campaign has been very clear about, and it informs, the quick little words that you heard at the very beginning of the webinar about focusing on the gaps. So the next slide talks about our aspiration to disrupt generational poverty by focusing specifically on the needs of kids who are economically challenged, fragile, and in otherwise marginalized families, and to use the third grade reading milestone as an inflection point, and increasingly focusing on kindergarten as well as an inflection point, and really mobilizing an entire community, an entire state, an entire nation around the common sense idea that some of the earliest and best predictors of whether or not kids succeed in school and indeed in life, we can predict that very early by whether and to what extent they hit these critical milestones and move up this success ladder one rung to the next. So what we do at the campaign, the next slide covers, how a lot of what work that I've been engaged in and our colleagues of serving as a hub, a broker, a dissemination channel, an accelerator for this work. We help communities like St. Louis and Kansas City put a stake in the ground about the importance of this issue, mobilize around a plan, get the key constituencies together that are going to be necessary to make progress for the long haul. And I want to just emphasize that this is not grade level reading is not something you can fix in a year. You don't fix third grade by starting it in third grade. We have a prenatal all the way through third strategy. We have a community-wide strategy, and that starts certainly with parents and caregivers, but extends and offers a role in this broader mobilization effort for everyone across the community. I want to say just a word about the gaps, and the gaps specifically that the campaign is focused on, because that sounds like a really nice slogan, like focus on the gaps. And we give sometimes a lot of lip service to slogans without kind of understanding what might be beneath them. And I would say there's something quite provocative that exists underneath this idea of focusing on the gaps. A lot of us over the course of our careers may have heard this language about all kids, making sure all kids are reading and all kids are successful. And what that slide at the very beginning of this webinar suggests is that all rarely works for all. And with the campaign, we are not pursuing an all kids vague kind of all kids strategy. It is much more of a strategy that is normed and focused intensively on the needs of low-income kids and families. And what we see is that gaps are present at the beginning of kindergarten between low-income kids and their more affluent peers. Those are present and very predictable at the beginning of kindergarten. That those gaps are exacerbated, so the next slide, by chronic absenteeism in the early grades. I hope everyone has been paying attention to the data and the stories and articles that we're seeing across the country about the urgent need to close gaps around chronic absenteeism, particularly in the early grades. Attendance Works, one of our earliest and strongest partners in the campaign, is leading a 5-year effort. I would encourage Missouri to join this effort to make a public commitment to cut the rate of chronic absenteeism, which exploded during the pandemic, to cut that in half over the next 5 years. I believe that is a campaign worth leaning in on and taking advantage of and working very hard to address that. We're also focused on gaps made worse by the lack of access to tutoring and mentoring opportunities. And this is particularly, an issue where I know Lisa and her team in St. Louis are working to develop a tutoring collaborative that makes it a reality for when we understand and we see the need for tutoring and mentoring, that we're able to mobilize as a community and actually focus on that gap. And then the gaps that grow during the after school hours and the summer months. We've had research on summer learning loss, particularly as it relates to literacy and math, that goes back to 1906. So, we've known about this for a long time. It is past time that we actually do something about it and really focus on literacy and language development that takes place during the after school and summer hours as a gap closing effort. I'm pleased to report in the next slide that since 2012, we have more than 300 communities across the country that have engaged in this work. I believe this is now a movement that is built for this moment, this particular moment in time. And I'm encouraged by the fact that Missouri is right in the middle of that. You're at the center of this network. You have very strong communities in St. Louis and in Kansas City that have taught us a lot about what it takes to build a strong and vibrant coalition that can close gaps. And that's really the focus of where I want to dig in just a little bit with you all. And many of these bullet points and comments that I'll share today has been informed by an intensive period of listening and interviews that I've been doing with communities across the country. And in particular, one in Florida, the Indian River County in Florida, I want to just flag because since 2019, they have moved from 31st in the state of Florida on third grade reading to 5th. That to me proves that progress is possible. That also proves to me that the kind of coalition-led strategy, the kind of collaborative work that brings schools and communities together, that kind of work that actually puts impact in the collective impact formulation. I think there are a lot of people out there talking about collective impact, that they get it only as far as collective. They don't actually get to impact. I am really encouraged by what I'm seeing in campaign communities that are focused on what's working, where, why, how, and making sure that more of that takes place. So I'm going to sort of highlight a few broad themes. Obviously, we could go a whole lot deeper on any of this. I don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to try to be brief. First thing, close the gap between what we know and what we do. There's an adage that says basically when we know better, we do better. Sometimes. I think we still need to work really, really hard to actually do some of the things that we know. I think the commitment to the science of reading is important. I think we also need to have a commitment to science in all of aspects of the work that we do. The science of human development tends to be underattended to. The science of teaching and reading, what we know about all of those things, and to be willing to be accountable and position the community to really be accountable for doing this, for getting this done, for calling the question. I would even say, to use a little turn of phrase you're familiar with, to turn the page perhaps on some practices, some strategies, and things that have not worked as well, or things that probably were fine for the status of our knowledge and information when those things took place. But we do know more, we do know better, and a coalition is in a unique position to be able to hold that and to call the question on, are we doing what we know is the right thing to do based on the science? The other thing that coalitions can do and have done that it can be really effective is work on closing the gaps between programs, services, and strategies that we pursue. I go to a lot of communities. It's not hard for folks to be able to point me to an individual program serving 100 kids, couple hundred kids, that's working, that's moving the needle on an outcome for young people. I go to very few places that can show me how a portfolio of programs, services, and strategies are connected, aligned, stacked, and bundled, and brought together so that they have enough power to really close those gaps that we're talking about. Only community coalitions like the ones that you're building have the power to do that. There's an important role that funders play in doing that, in setting the table, providing resources for infrastructure, for the things that are harder to fundraise around, like getting people together and making really good decisions about how you connect and dovetail and hand off from one program to the next, so that the same kids, the same families, a great example would be public housing. Kids who live in public housing are getting a high enough dosage and concentration of services and supports that they need. Coalitions also close the gap between early learning in our K-12 systems We have to be intentional, particularly about the kindergarten year. You're going to see a lot more coming from us and other partners about making kindergarten a sturdier bridge between the early childhood and the K-12 systems. We have a lot of redesign work to do, centered on and focused on the kindergarten year. And I think there's also some real power that a coalition can play. And we've seen this in many, many communities around uniting schools and communities around a shared goal and aspiration. So that's the next gap that's on the next build here and my bullet points. To close the gap between schools and communities, that's been kind of a major focus of my career over the past 30 years or so. Have been trying to make the case that, this is not a schools alone kind of agenda. It is not we need to have solutions together as a community that address some of the challenges like school readiness, like school attendance, like summer and after school that exist beyond the reach of even our best and strongest schools and teachers and education leaders. So we really do need to figure out ways, and coalitions are figuring out ways to bring the full impact of those community solutions to bear on what happens within our public schools. And then finally, I would just wrap up by saying we also have to close gaps between places that are achieving results for low-income kids and families. And that means participating in things like this. I know Lisa has been a great colleague and friend participating in our monthly calls with other state leads across the country. I know Kristen has been part of some of those conversations as well. We're trying to make this network a shared asset that you can use strategically to import and to export your ideas, adapt and adopt things that are working in other places as well, and that are working well, because we can't feel like we have to start at scratch on everything or square one. This network gives you the ability to start at step 3 or 4, having learned from some of the mistakes and some of the R&D that other communities have done. And so I hope you will continue to take full advantage of that. Please utilize me and the campaign in ways that can be helpful to you as you continue this work. And I just want to close by saying a huge thank you again to everyone who's putting Missouri on the map when it comes to literacy. So it's just been such a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Ron, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the campaign for grade level reading. We wouldn't be here in Missouri without you. I guess the greatest form of flattery is all the times I copy what is happening across the nation. Kristen's like, yeah, we do a lot of that too. Well, there's great work happening, and we can then take that work and bring it to our local communities. So I am honored also to introduce Dr. Kristen Drugge. She's the Executive Director of Turn the Page KC, and she's going to be telling us about the Kansas City's Literacy Collaborative, the Heartland Literacy Coalition. Following a 30-year career in education, Dr. Drugge assumed the leadership of Turn the Page KC in 2021. Over the previous 20 years, Dr. Drugge served in leadership roles in the creation and growth of 3 different charter schools across Southern California and Kansas City, Missouri, each of which continues serving children today. In her current role as executive director, Kristen has focused the organization's work in 2 areas: providing coordination services for collective impact approaches to systems change impacting children's literacy, and 2, providing children and families access to inclusive books with the resources to support their most powerful impact on literacy. Dr. Drugge received her undergraduate degree from Duke University and both her master's and PhD in educational psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles. Kristen and her husband David have 4 grown children, 6 grandchildren, 2 dogs, 1 cat, and as all great Missourians, a front porch where company is always welcome. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here today to share the work that our coalition has been doing really over the past 2 years. And while I'm sharing today that process of getting here, which has spanned those 2 years, we truly are at the point now of launching as the Heartland Literacy Coalition for the Metro KC area. And as we talk through our process to date, I wanted to start with who has been involved in this founding process. So if you move forward, thank you. And while this shares with you the 6 organizations that are the literacy focused organizations, as well as our 2 founding library partners, I want to emphasize that everybody involved in this work has had our eye unwaveringly on how we, as the collaborative, will grow to welcome all organizations and individuals, agencies, and services across the area in all arenas of work, because we know that it takes everyone tackling the issues of literacy from all directions and perspectives to actually make the work count. So, as I talk a bit about the process to get where we are today, I'll reflect on the fact that it started really quite organically as the members of different literacy nonprofits came together to start conversations about the fact that there was a lot of confusion in the city about what these different organizations were, what they did, how they overlapped, how they could support each other. And perhaps the most concerning to all of us was the fact that we recognized we were functioning in isolation from each other. And that was actually growing into a bit of a competitive atmosphere because of the need to secure adequate resources for our work. So rather than supporting each other, we were really kind of protecting territory in some ways, which was counter to everything we wanted to be accomplishing. So we started off with a real casual conversation, really about like, let's just all get in a room together, meet each other face to face, understand what each organization was working on, where in the city it was happening, and start talking more collaboratively. And it was such a welcome conversation. I think we all just flocked to it. And at each meeting we had, we would encourage everyone to reach out to other literacy partners they had, other agencies or organizations they knew about, bring them to the table with us, really enhance that conversation. And I want to give credit for really a turning point in our conversation to Jillian Helm, the executive director at Literacy KC, who really came to our second in-person meeting and said, we have all been successful in our work in terms of fulfilling our commitments for our grant funding, reaching our programmatic goals, and yet nothing is changing. And we need to think more audaciously about what we as a community of literacy-focused organizations can do to change that path in Kansas City. And so that set us on the course of really determining how we could develop a strategic plan as a coalition and move forward the work we needed to see happen. So over the next year or so, we put together a plan to identify a consulting team to walk us through the strategic planning process. We secured funding, which we are deeply appreciative of, from School Smart KC, and that provided us with a 6-month process that has gotten us to where we are today. It included developing our stated purpose as well as our clear outcomes for what we hope to see. And I will read our purpose. I don't like to read slides, but I think it's important that we just keep it in our mind all the time. We aim to utilize our collective resources to establish Kansas City as the model literate city, where lifelong learning is accessible and valued by all community members. And I think one of the aspects of the coalition that I value most, just speaking personally, is that the different organizations involved in this really tap into literacy across the lifespan, focusing on prenatal care, 0 to 1, 0 to 5, early childhood education, K-12 education, college level work, career training, adult literacy, and the cycle of generational literacy that parents and children participate in together. And so we're really looking at this as a comprehensive issue, not only of literacy, but of all of the factors in a city that impact the many parts of that generational challenge. That moved us forward to the outcomes that we seek. And I am moving a little quickly because I want to make sure we have time for Lisa too. We will be sharing out these slides, and so you can look at these with more detail. But our outcomes are really about ensuring that we mobilize every sector of the community and bring everyone into this work, and that all citizens of Kansas City have access to the information they need and the opportunities they need to further their own learning. Right now, we are functioning as the founding core group in our committees to establish our own governance and sustainability, begin the work of developing partnerships with all of the other hardworking organizations out there that want to support this work, doing outreach and ensuring that we have a process in place to evaluate work through a data dashboard. And so, Lisa, I'm going to stop there and give you some time as well. But thank you so much for creating this opportunity for us to share the work.
Kristen, you know, I am right behind you. When it comes to Kansas City, they're like 6 years ahead in this collaborative work. And so I truly admire. We have some questions in the Q&A that I want to make sure that we get to. And I really appreciate Heather and Kristen and Ron answering any of those questions as I conclude that here in St. Louis, a year ago, we realized that tutoring, high impact tutoring was not accessible to those, especially in low income school districts in St. Louis. And the research was saying that this is one of the great things that, and as Ms. Knight said earlier, you know, that's what the state of Missouri is putting their money into, is high impact tutoring. We brought together all of the organizations here in St. Louis that provide free tutoring services for low-income children and families. Started convening to get to know each other, as Kristen would say, get to know each other, and brought together monthly. The first steps, getting to know each other. We have a shared research of best practices, and we have a shared learning and understanding about training tutors in the science of reading. All of us spent 2 Saturdays with UFly training, and we're hoping to have some letters training down the road. We set our vision together. We hired yesterday Bellwether Consultants to do a complete analysis of landscape analysis of supply and demand in tutoring here in the St. Louis region. We're setting benchmarks for quality, and we will be galvanizing St. Louisans to be part of the solution. One of the greatest problems our tutoring organizations have is they don't have enough tutors. To get a tutor from the YMCA, it's a 6-month waiting list. To get a tutor for you as an adult at the YMCA, it's a 1-year waiting list. We need St. Louisans to come to the table and become tutors. So one of the, I've been writing a lot of op-eds in our local newspapers, but we're excited to be showing the film Sentenced on September 8th. We will be showing this at the 24/1 Cinema, and we will be showing this along with whatever, Ron, hundreds of other Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities across the country. And at the end of this documentary, people can sign up to become tutors. And we're also working with our local universities to recruit additional work study students to get paid. And we're looking at AmeriCorps models, including Literacy Lab that exists in Kansas City. Once again, Kansas City. We are, once again, collaboration and communication is key. Are there any questions, Kristen, in the Q&A before we
It
end?
looks as though the majority are being answered in writing by the individuals they were directed to. I know Heather is typing madly on her end. Thank you, Heather.
If questions are not answered, I will answer them with the slides and with the recording that you will receive. I want to make sure, also I will be sending out, this is GLR week. If you have some time today at 2 o'clock, we have the influence of social emotional learning, closing literacy gaps in the classroom. And I'm really excited about tomorrow's plenary session, AI's gap closing potential. I'll send the you know what, I'll put those I'll send them to you, how you can easily register. Also, right after this one, we have another GLR session called Building Brighter Futures. National funders share insights on place-based strategies. And tomorrow you can join me again Ready on Day One, tools to support GLR community coalitions with preparing for school. Just for you to know that Ready on Day One is a different format, so I will send that out in a different registration link. And I thank everyone so much, especially for my technical not expertise. I really appreciate it. Anything else, Kristen, that you see?
I don't think so. I think that's everything. Lisa, thank you so much for making this happen. Lisa is the force that pulled everything together, and we are very grateful.
Yes.
We got some
very
work to
much
do.
so. Thank you.
Sure, we have so much great work to do, but we have so many guideposts ahead of us that we're going to meet and a track that we can follow. And I can't thank Ron enough for letting us understand the national landscape. Heather for leading us here in Missouri. The work that you've done in the past little less than 2 years, maybe a year and a half, is tremendous. And Kristen, I'm thinking turn the page, Missouri. What are you thinking?
Sounds good.
Do it.
It's a plan.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you all and have a wonderful day, rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Happy GLR week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Hey, Carrie, you did great. You did great.
Heck, that's not my thing. All right, I need an assistant. Bye.
Bye-bye.